Stories are powerful. Just think about a movie that you loved or a series that you binged that you felt you were connected to or drawn in by. Think about a time that someone was telling you a story about something that happened to them and you hung on to every word and every detail. The thing about stories is they don't just entertain or help you fall asleep. They pull you in. They can help you get to know others better simply by hearing their experience. Stories make challenging topics clearer, big ideas easier to understand, and can even turn painful experiences into hopeful ones. No matter what the topic is, stories can help us see things in a new way and give you a fresh perspective. So today, what we're gonna do is a little different. We're gonna hear some stories from a few different people. Every person you're about to hear from is gonna share about an experience that they had regarding race. Here's the thing about race. Race is one of those things that we don't get to choose about our lives. It's something we're all born with and it doesn't ever change. We also know that throughout history, and still today, there have been people who don't understand, accept, or even like people whose race is different than their own. That causes racial tension, which we're defining as a struggle or an anger that exists between people or groups of different people. If you have social media or have watched the news, you've seen painful, devastating stories of people being treated unfairly. You've seen anger, you've heard the conversations, or maybe you've just felt confused by what's going on altogether. Today, hopefully, after hearing these stories, you'll have a bigger picture and a better idea of those things some people experience when it comes to their race. Maybe you know racial tension because you've seen stories on the news or online that talk about this in our world. Maybe you know this because there are members of your family who talk openly about the way they feel about people of different races. Maybe you know this because you've seen it happen in your school, your neighborhood, or in your community. Maybe you don't really know a lot about racial tension because you haven't seen it or experienced it. Maybe you know racial tension because it's something that you experience every single day. No matter what your experience or knowledge of racial tension is, my hope is that after hearing these stories from real people with real experiences, you're challenged to think about it differently. So let's lean in, listen, and learn from these stories.
What's up, everyone? I'm Caleb, and I'm biracial. And for me, that means my mom is white and my dad is black. Growing up biracial, I faced the challenge of not really knowing where I fit in. Sometimes I used to feel like I had to say or do certain things around my black friends and family to be accepted by them. And then I feel like I had to say or do other things around my white friends and family to be accepted by them. I remember a time I was hanging out with some friends and one of them told me, "Caleb, you're the whitest black person I know." I had no idea what that meant or even if it was a compliment or insult, but it definitely made me feel uncomfortable because I felt that I had to cancel out one part of me to be accepted by another. There was another time when I was getting ready to take a major test and we had to fill in the option to specify our race. And I joked to a friend that I didn't know which choice I should select. And that friend said, "What do you mean? Aren't you just black?" Those situations made me feel, when it came to race, I had to pick a side, be either black or white. And since my hair and skin color are darker than some biracial people's, I felt like I had to choose to be black because that's how people saw me. I didn't have a problem that my friends thought I was only black, but that wasn't the complete representation of who I am. Here's the thing, it can be very uncomfortable when other people try to label you by your race. And in my case, why couldn't I just be accepted for who I was? Like, just Caleb.
Hey, I'm Bobby, and when I was in the 8th grade, we had a school dance where the girls were supposed to ask the guys to go with them. Now, I hope that a particular girl would ask me to take her to the dance because I really liked her. And guess what? She asked me, and I said yes. And y'all, I was so excited that I got my outfit ready weeks in advance, like weeks. A few days after she asked me to the dance, my school had a skate party, and I met her dad for the first time. He introduced himself to me, and we talked for a few minutes. After the skate party, the girl came up to me and told me that she couldn't go with me to the dance anymore. Y'all, I was so devastated that I didn't even go to the dance. I just stayed home and watched TV. And you know, I spent years wondering why things changed all of a sudden. So when I saw her a few years later, I asked her why she didn't go to the dance with me. and she told me her dad wouldn't let me take her to the dance because I'm Black. There was literally no other reason except the color of my skin. And at the time, I couldn't understand why. It was at that moment I started questioning so many things about myself. See, sometimes we don't always understand why people are unfair because of race. I couldn't understand why someone would do that to me. Like, will this be an issue I'll always deal with for the rest of my life?
Stories are powerful because they allow us to see ourselves in them. We relate to them. In fact, maybe one of the stories you just heard sounded familiar to something that you've experienced. You might know what it's like to be treated in a way that you shouldn't be treated because of your race. Maybe you've never thought about any of this because you didn't think it was a big deal. Maybe you've seen someone being mistreated because of their race and even participated, but you never thought about what it's like to be the other person. No matter where you fit into all of this, I wanted you to hear these stories so that you can know that you're not alone in your experience. When it comes to race, sometimes our differences cause people to think of others less than, or themselves as better than, which is known as bias. And if we're not careful, bias leads to treating other people differently or poorly, and that's discrimination. So why is there racial tension? There's racial tension because bias, discrimination, and prejudice are real. Prejudice is an assumption or an opinion that's not based on an actual reason or an actual experience. Then we think of others as less than because of their race, and we treat them worse because of their race. It can cause incredible pain, and it's not okay, or something that God's okay with either. We hear about it all the time. The truth is, together we reflect the image of God. Our differences are evident of a God who created every detail of every person with intentionality. Out of all the things God created, people, meaning you and me, and every person you see, are the ones chosen to reflect God's image, to represent God. In case you ever forgot that message, Jesus' life, death, and resurrection remind us. Jesus came to make wrong things right and show us the best way to live. He reminded us over and over in the way he treated people like him and different from him that every person has incredible value. In a time when people accepted racism or the unfair or unjust treatment of someone because of their race, Jesus literally changed everything. No matter who he was interacting with, he treated them with love and respect. Because their differences were something to fear? No, they were a reminder of God's unique mark on every person. One of Jesus' followers, who also happened to be his brother, wrote about this very idea. Like Jesus, James grew up in a culture where some people were treated better than others. And it was normal. Some people would even say it was right. It was so common that they may not have even noticed they were doing it. But after Jesus' death and resurrection, James became a believer in Jesus. He wrote a letter to other Christians saying this: "My dear brothers and sisters, how can you claim to have faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ if you favor some people over others?" Showing favor is treating people in an unequal way. In other words, James is saying, how can you say you follow Jesus and treat some people like they're better than others? Jesus didn't do that. Being a Jesus follower means acting like Jesus and treating everyone the way that Jesus did. Like every person was valuable and had a God-given purpose to live out. When you live as if that's not true, your faith seems like it's not real. And then James says this: "Yes, indeed, it is good when you obey the royal laws found in the scriptures. Love your neighbor as yourself. But if you favor some people over others, you are committing a sin. You are guilty of breaking the law." As a follower of Jesus, we believe when you know who Jesus is, it changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, and it changes how you see everyone else. That means even if racial bias is everywhere in our world, even if it seems common, even if it can't be common with us, that we need to follow the example of Jesus. That's what loving our neighbor is, and living like Jesus looks like. Remember, together we reflect the image of God. When God made mankind, he said this: "So God created mankind in his own image." That means every person, no matter their age, gender, race, is valued. This shows us something about God that we wouldn't otherwise know and should be treated with respect. Reflecting God's image means when people see you, they see more of who God is. Let's hear from our friends once again.
For anyone who may have felt a little confused like I did in being biracial, I want to encourage you to embrace everything about the way God made you and others. You don't have to pick a side if you're biracial. All parts of you are unique. And that makes you complete. You can just be you. Accept and appreciate that you are unique. And if you run into people who don't fully understand you, that's okay. You can remind them and yourself what makes you, you.
If you've experienced unfair treatment because of your race like I did, I first want to say it's totally not okay. And I'm really sorry you experienced that. But remember, you have the right to stand up for yourself. If you don't know where to start, try talking to someone you trust. Let them know what you're experiencing and how you're feeling. And remember, you're amazing just the way God made you. And you weren't created to doubt who you are or feel less than anyone else.
Now, if you've been hurt or mistreated because of your race, I want you to know that that's not okay. Again, the pain you feel is real, and I'm sorry that that's how you've been treated. And I want you to know that here, it's not okay. We are committed to making this a safe place for you to talk about your experiences and to find people who are willing to walk with you and stand beside you through it all. And if you're someone who hasn't experienced any bias or poor treatment because of your race, you may feel that this is difficult for you to understand. Maybe like the people that James wrote to, you never really noticed this before. Or maybe you're someone who's trying to change the way that you treat people or even change your mind about a bias that you might have had in the past. And that's amazing. I want you to know that I'm glad that you're here too, because we want you to be a part of the conversation with us. It's so important to listen to people who are willing to share their stories like the ones that we heard today. Stories that help us learn and grow and change and understand. So let's thank the people that were here in our videos today for sharing their experiences with us. I know we all learned so much from them. We know that you have your own story as well. And that's why small groups are important. We want you to connect with the people in your group and talk about your experiences, ask questions, and most importantly, to have a leader who is for you and loves you deeply. Remember, as you think about those trusted adults that you're gonna talk with, I want you to remember what it looks like to live like Jesus, and that's to love one another.